Oh, wow, the music got real quiet there. There it goes. Happy IQ video movie week. Oh, I mean Extra Innings episode 1. Got my weeks confused there. Welcome to our first ARL Extra Innings episode of the year. We have done it. We are through ARL Qualifier May. We stumbled our way through Qualifier 1. My name is Luke. Welcome. If you're new around here, this is how these things usually start when I'm the host. Half scuffed. Usually the music's banging. And here we are. How's everybody doing? Is everyone doing okay this evening? Hello. Say it again. My name is Luke. I am one of the ARL program directors. It doesn't seem so scuffed this time. We love that. We're upgrading. We're moving up in the world. Let me get to when I have to switch screens, and then we'll bring back the how scuffed it can be. Yeah, so ARL May, huh? It was a thing. I thought it went really, really well. I was actually really excited to see the turnout we had. We had 13 robots competing this past weekend, which I know doesn't sound like a whole ton, but that's actually our largest ARL May qualifier that we've ever had. I've only had 2 seasons worth of them, but that's a good sign. So as you know, a program director and someone heavily involved with the creation and the functioning of ARL, that trending in the right direction is a good thing. And we ran ahead of schedule, so that's really cool as well. So I thought that overall the event ran really well. I was really excited to see everybody there. We had some of our stronger Arizona teams competing earlier than some, we've seen some of them, which was awesome. And playoffs were exciting. We had one upset, which was really cool, and a lot of interesting strategies. So I'm excited to take a look at them. I know the VODs for the individual matches aren't live yet, and we're working on them. We had a lot of, as you can imagine, with it being our first event of the year, we had a lot of new faces and new roles on the volunteer side of things. And so with that comes some bumps in the road, including making sure that we were clipping just the match and not like 5 minutes of extra. So we are currently going through and making those smaller so that when we upload them to our YouTube, that it's not just 10 minutes of music playing and people walk around the field. Speaking of the YouTube, it would be a good time to take a look at the chat and check out some of those links. The Arizona Robotics League does have an Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. We're even on LinkedIn. And, of course, our ARL Discord. I'm loving that we are using the Discord for some more open discussion than we've had ever. I think we have over 300 members in there. It was, I think, actually pretty good, pretty useful during this past robotics season, FRC season, in season. And I'm looking forward to seeing how it grows. It's kind of like an in-house Chief Delphi, right? More direct answers, people easy to facilitate, parts or practice or whatever the case may be. So if you're not in there, I suggest you hop in. The YouTube is a big place you want to be and subscribe. That's where we upload all of our matches, and it is kind of like our historical archive. We hopefully are able to do a little bit faster for the next event. Like I said, a couple of bumps in the road to be expected. But we are getting better. We'll get better as each event goes on. By the time we get to the championship, we're a well-oiled machine. So yeah, I don't know if everyone in the chat. What do y'all think of the event this past weekend? Anything surprise you? any of the rankings at the end surprise you at the end of the event. I'm just pulling up those rankings right now. We can take a look. So like I said, we had 13 robots compete this past weekend, resulting in these rankings that I could have pulled up sooner, but I'm zooming in. This is how we looked. This is how we looked after our 9 qualification matches. You know, on the event side of things, in case you didn't know, generating the match schedule is kind of a tricky thing. You know, we I don't know about pride ourselves, but we do our best to give teams the most matches that we can, right? But you know, ARL has a couple of things that we have to balance when we generate the match schedule, right? We choose the number of matches we want to provide. Those 2 things that we're balancing are time, right? We're balancing the amount of time that the matches, like the qualification, takes, and we're balancing back-to-back matches, right? We don't want to burn teams out. We don't want the robots to fall apart. So we were able to do 9 matches this past weekend. We could have gone for 10, but when you go for 10, that means you have to, right? When you want 10 matches per team, that means you have to add enough matches for everyone to get to 10, or you're just going to have some weird surrogate matches and nobody likes those and yada, yada, yada. So 9 matches per team. If you were there this weekend, you also knew, and if you weren't there this weekend, we used Phantom Robots, again, for the ARL Qualifier. If you're new here, or you're new to ARL, even if you know FRC, you probably don't know what a Phantom Robot is. A surrogate match is, it's like a match. So, like, let's say that all of the teams had 9 matches, but some of the teams only had 8, but you didn't have enough teams to make it exactly 9 matches for each team. So some of the teams would have to play a 10th match in order for all the teams to get to 8 qualification or to 9 qualification matches. So we call that a surrogate match. Yeah, talking about the elephant in the room here. Shout out to our crew behind the scenes for a couple different things. We had the ARL qualifier connected to the Blue Alliance from the get-go this time around, which again is a step in the right direction. I know we kind of got there by the end of the season, but yeah, the Blue Alliance and Nexus were both working, and shout out to our queuers for getting Nexus up and running. Little shout out to again, a little shout out to some people behind the scenes, but if you take a closer look at the Blue Alliance page, just found out about this today myself, take a closer look at the Blue Alliance page for the qualifier, you'll notice something pretty cool and unique. Check this out. Anyone notice something interesting about these teams and how they're being shown on the page? That's right. They have letters. Very cool, right? So it's pretty cool. Yeah, so shout out to people, to everyone, both on the Blue Alliance side of things and on the ARL planning committee side of things, who were able to get this working. So if you go to rankings, you can see that the team number with their letter is how they're shown here, and for the playoffs and results. And we will do our best to have that connected and functioning like that ahead of time for the next event. As long as we know, as long as we get our confirmations on the alt robots that are going to be in attendance, we can attach this earlier, which is great. So now if you scroll to the bottom of the rankings, you'll see that there we had up to 18 robots competing because 5 of them were Phantom robots. Like I was saying before, if you're new around here, but you know FRC, you probably don't know what a Phantom robot is, and that sounds really weird. It's because it is. We utilize, essentially, a ghost to fill out our match schedule so that teams do not have to play back-to-back matches. And therefore, we need to get to 18 teams. So we added 5 ghosts. These ghosts populate the match schedule, right? In fact, in Qual 2, you had an entire team of ghosts and are awarded points just based on some things that they could have helped you with in the match. So you'll see there are plenty of matches that didn't have a full alliance of 3, but these, just rest assured that if you're very confused by this, they were awarded points. Yes. So, yeah, in Qual 2, something that we try to avoid, myself and our head ref Joshua, something that we try to avoid is creating a situation where a team of nothing on the field beats a team of robots. Like, that should never be the case, right? Yes, you'll find that the point values are set in a way so that that's pretty much impossible to lose to a team of all Phantoms. Anyway, back to the rankings. So after our 9 qualification matches, Degrees of Freedom 6413 ranked number 1, 2486, making their earliest ARL qualifier appearance, ranked number 2. And 9432 world champion 8-bit ranked number 3. Off-season numbers have not gone past 9999 yet because we run FMS. If we maybe ran Chesney Arena, we could set our custom numbers as much, do whatever we wanted. Because we use FMS, we are limited to 9999. It has not gone above that. So we did have to institute a variety of rules this season, which we've covered in previous episodes, and you can check out the handbook for how exactly we assign alt robots to their numbers because we have a limited number of space. I do not personally know what their plan is for numbers going into next season. I imagine they will have to go to 5 digits, but it has not been updated yet. FMS has not been updated for next season, as far as I know. All right, so that rounds out our top 3. A couple of surprises. If you tuned into the warm-up episode last week, you knew that I predicted our 8-bit to rank number 1, and they ended up ranking 3. I think that watching qualifiers field side for maybe more than I ever have before, at least over the last 2 years, dating back to maybe our first qualifier in 2022. If you don't know ARL or ARL strategy too much, when you have small events like this and you play so many matches in quick succession, the ranking high is actually quite difficult. If you've ever attended the Arizona State Championship, the Sanghi State Championship, you'll know that this is also the case, right? Ranking high over the course of just a morning consistently is very difficult, right? Because you are kind of you are at the mercy of the match schedule. And this year in particular, the point values of things are so close, and with amping, it's really hard to just solo dominate an entire qual period, right? So it's really hard to go undefeated. It's really hard to consistently rank 1. That said, absolute massive for 6413 to go 9-0 with 24 ranking points. And that's a full 6 ranking points ahead of the next closest team. That's really awesome, right? I'm not going to dive, into their schedule because at the end of the day, everybody, has to win. Everybody, if everybody plays matches, everybody can win matches. But if you look at their average match, right, it's not far off of the next two, right? And their average auto, other than kind of what we talked about in our things to look for on the warm-up episode, other than 8-bit's awesome auto, DOF's auto is right there, right? So I the way they played quals and it's one thing to have a really good match schedule. It's another thing to execute your match schedule strategy and stay robot healthy throughout the day enough to win those matches. So absolutely huge for them. And why is it so huge for them? Can anyone in chat talk about why not just going 9-0 is so huge for them, but the number of ranking points they ended up with? Does anyone know? Anyone got an answer for that? It's so huge because the way we rank for the ARL Championship it's heavily based on your ranking score at the end of a qualifier, right? So being above 2.5 means that Degrees of Freedom has points awarded to them for having a ranking score above 2.5 that just straight up the next three do not have. So it will take, let's pretend that these results are repeated, or let's pretend that these results are repeated except that DOF has a ranking score of under 2.5 at the July event, right? They have a step up here because they ranked 2.5 or higher in one of their qualifier wins. So, if 2403 come into July and they win again, but they win again with a 2.0 to 2.5 ranking score, they're gonna be ranked below at the end. At the championship rankings, they'll be ranked below 6413. So, finding a qualifier to win and to win with above a 2.5, or at least above the ranking average of some teams that you expect to see at the top of the championship rankings is huge. It's huge, and it's why we recommend going to the May qualifier, right? Because the May qualifier is a smaller field, and it's easier, quote unquote easier, to have good results there. So you can kind of boost your championship rankings by attending early. So shout out to them. I was pleased to see 9432 their auto work as well as it did, because I shouted it out on the warm-up episode. I know that they dealt with Swerve. Oops. Oh no. How do I go back? Because I'm full screen. Tee. There we go. They dealt with Swerve problems for a few matches in quals and then definitely in playoffs. But they did awesome. The Coconuts, they get better and better the more events they play. And by the time they made it to playoffs, as long as their robot stayed, functioning, they were really solid, especially at the amp, and they had the climb. So that's our top three. I don't know if this was surprising to anyone. I would say the top four were pretty solid to me. Like, at least what I was expecting. I just personally was not expecting DOF to flex so hard with the 9-0 24 ranking points. This was huge. This was really cool to see. So going into playoffs, we had our four alliances. DOF took 2403 with the number one pick, which was very interesting to me at the time, and we can get into that in a second. That left 2486 to captain the number 2 seed, and they promptly pick up the number 3 seed, 9432, sliding 2375 the Dragons up to the captain spot. And in a reverse of the Arizona East Alliance selection, 2375 captaining number 3 seed picked 498 with their first pick, and that left 3853 Prytronics to pick up 1165 with their first pick, and 7755 completing the 4 seed, which we'll get to in a second, was a pretty strong 4 seed as it was able to upset the number 1 seed. Alliance 3 picks up 1165B with the third, and Alliance 2 picks up 7703, and Alliance 1 picks up 7755B. So we only had one robot go unselected, but it was an alt robot of 1165. So all of our teams in attendance made playoffs, so congratulations to all of them. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on the way Alliance selection worked out. I don't know if it was a surprise, but something that I thought was interesting was DOF selecting 2403 over 9432. I think 2403 had a 4-note auto that they were running. 9432 obviously had their 4-note auto that they were running. My guess is that DOF saw how powerful 2403 can be shooting from distance. Whereas 9432 mostly cycles to the subwoofer. And since 64 DOF also mostly cycles to the subwoofer, maybe they were looking for someone that shot really well from range in case they met a blocker in playoffs, some kind of defender at the subwoofer. Although, ironically, I don't think we ever saw someone defend at the subwoofer, which was really surprising in playoffs. And 2403, like we talked about in the warm up, they're so good from range that if you're very confident in your quick amp, then they're an excellent pick. So, and we saw a lot of as we saw the strategy shake out in playoffs. DOF was the main amper for that alliance, and 2403 really just cycled the field and did what they do best. That said, I did think that it left them a little exposed, if you will, on the autonomous side of things. 2403 wasn't hitting their 4-note with 100% consistency. And one thing that I really loved, and we'll see it in a second, about 2486 is that they had a really cool midline auto. Drove all the way out to the midline, was picking up notes from there. And combined that with 9432's 4-note in the middle. I think that Alliance 2, and especially, obviously nobody could calculate this at the time, but they ended up with 7703, who had an auto note that they shot. So on paper, this didn't end up being the case, but on paper, the number 2 seed had a stronger auto period than the number 1 seed. Now, the number 1 seed, in my estimation, and on paper, had a extremely strong teleop, which is what they end up riding to victory. But I thought it was very interesting that Alliance 1 had the edge in teleop, and Alliance 2, in my opinion, had the edge in auto. And then from a strategy standpoint, 2375's pick of 498 makes sense. I think that 3853 was also a super valid pick in that situation. And we'll see it when we watch some of their matches. They kind of turned it on in playoffs, both scoring really well in the amp and in the speaker. So anyway, that's how the Alliance selection turned out. The next step would be to watch the matches. And so let's take a look at boom. So this is match number 1. So the reason I want to take a look at this match is because it ended up being an upset. Yeah, I'm getting some data in from the side from 6413, which kind of confirm what I was hinting at before. 2403 was by far and away the best teleop scorer in terms of notes, which we knew. If you guys were here for our watch party for the Las Vegas regional, we knew that was probably the case. They also both 2403, I forgot to mention this, both 2403 and 9432 kind of dealt with some robot issues during qualification, and very specifically in their last matches. 2403 had some intake issues and were sat dead for a bit, and 9432 with some swerve hiccups. So I think they were both viable on the table, and clearly I DOF made the right pick, or at least made the right pick for them. Not to skip ahead, but they obviously their pick was solid, and I don't even personally probably disagree with it. It was just probably the one pick, or the one spot of the Alliance selection that was the most interesting to me. So in match 1, we have our upset of the day. And so this is going to be Alliance 4 against Alliance number 1. And this match is hard to watch if you're Alliance 1. But it's only hard to watch in the last 30 seconds. So for the majority of this match, you are going to see the number 1 seed really kind of start to dance around their main strategy and what they ended up doing best, which is DOF commanding the amp and 2403 commanding notes from the middle of the field at the beginning of the match, and then just starting their cycles. DOF did a really great job, and besides besides Prytronics on occasion, DOF was really the only robot stealing notes from the other side of the field. And that might have to do with their confidence, the confidence in their driver. But really taking advantage of some of the passing strategies later on stealing notes from near the opponent's subwoofer, near the opponent's amp. But you'll see here for the majority of this match, the number one seed just cycles. You see the 4 seed again, Prytronic. Shout out to them. Obviously awkward. They just missed that amp note, but their amp mech working better than I've seen work before, and I was surprised at just how nicely shot in that note is. This is where the Red Alliance gets into trouble. The number 1 seed gets into trouble, or the fouls being drawn by 7755B here in the blue source. They just struggle to get out a few times once they get put in there, and it really, you can see, let's go back like 2 seconds here. You can really see the score, like at 50 seconds, right? Basically, red is running away with it. They're up by 30. Blue's doing their best they can, but it's hard to really come back when you're down this much. And then as 7755B is stuck in the red source down here, right? Down here. Oops, down here. You'll see this score start to really climb and get real close. Look at that, right? It really jettisons up there real fast. Take a look at these notes. Look at that. Look at that. Should the 1 seed have won this minus penalties? Yep, absolutely. Did the 4 seed keep it close enough that a few penalties swung the difference in the score? Yes, they did. And this is with the 4 seed also not at their max scoring capacity. 7755 main here, prime 7755. They end up being a very helpful part of their alliance later on in the playoffs, which we'll see. But they die on the field as well. So really, if we skip ahead here to the final score, apologies, just scrubbing through the main VOD. You'll see for blue, they edge out the victory on the back of 30 points worth of penalties. And we're going to see this as a theme in a lot of the matches, but I'm just going to go back and use this one as an example because it was the most blatant in terms of being able to show easily. At the ARL qualifiers, you probably do not need to be playing defense back here, right? Which is, I think, something that the number 1 seed coached up a little bit after the first, match here. You staying on this line where they're at currently, that's awesome. It's when you get into trouble going back closer to their subwoofer, their source, especially if you have, teams that have tank drive. It's you get easily pushed in. So you want to give yourself as much room as possible. And I know, it's hard for some of these oftentimes new drivers to keep up, especially if they're driving tank, but really want to keep an eye on where and what line you're playing defense on, because if you get if you slide into the source and you have a hard time getting out, it could really mean the scores really balloon out. So the 4 seed upsets the 1 drops to the lower bracket, and then in match 2, which 69 or 629.30, it's right here ish. Match 2 has alliance number 3 and alliance number 2 facing off against each other. From a strategical standpoint, and just based on the numbers on paper, I think that the number 3 alliance was possibly the weakest of the 3 in auto as well as teleop. But definitely, what doesn't help is this note, or sorry, it's not this one. It's coming up in a second. gets stuck on the blue amp. So in this match, Alliance 2, 8-bit doing their thing, scoring, in auto. The coconuts are their main amper as well. I will say that, like I pointed out, just looking at the Alliance selection, if I go back here to auto, the coconuts auto, like on paper, the coconuts didn't run their auto. Oh, yikes. Well, we'll see in a second. But on paper, the Red Alliance auto has a higher score potential than the 2 seed has a higher score potential than the 1 seed, but it never hit in a way where that was the case. So the number 3 seed's main strategy throughout all of their matches seemed to be that their third robot, 1165B, was going to play source line defense like we saw in match 1. 498 and Dragons would trade off, cycling the amp and speaker. And that is that. The Alliance 2, Red, seemed to have 2486 focusing on the amp, with 8-bit running full field cycles, and 7703 also playing source line defense. And again, we'll see in this match, kind of getting a little bit too close to the source and maybe drawing or one foul being drawn against them. If you zoom in on this part of your screen, you will see a note that is ripped in half and hanging over the amp wall, which is really unfortunate for the Blue Lions because they can never dislodge that. And so not only are they down in auto, then they spend pretty much they spend the rest of teleop unable to score in the amp and to get those bonus points. That said, the 2 seed does not run flawless through this match. 2486 does lose comms at some point. We skip ahead here in the interest of time. Under some defense, they eventually boop, boop, boop. There they go. Right here in the middle of the field. So as you can see, the score is really close, and the score is really only close in this one moment because Red is amplified, or 2 seed is amplified right now, and they're about to score. But there were some fouls over here at the source, which gave Alliance 3 what they needed to kind of catch up and bridge that gap. But this is where the Coconuts take a hit from their teammate. Awkward. And it looks like I don't see any lights on their robot, which there was lights before. I wonder if the battery unplugged or it was a radio thing. I'm not sure. If someone in chat is on the Coconuts, I would love to know. Oh, maybe it wasn't a battery, maybe it was a radio. They came back to life. But the Alliance 3 unable to amp, it really, it kind of just takes them out of this match completely. So, in the end, Alliance 2 squeaks out their first match victory and move up in the upper bracket and drop Alliance 3 to the lower bracket. If you are new to FRC playoffs, as sometimes teams in Arizona who compete in ARL are, as I move us to our next one, 650-47, which would be our lower bracket, or no, our upper bracket. You'll know that even the best alliances, right, even our 1 and our 2, that very first match you play of playoffs, you could spend, is like at a regional, you could spend that entire hour strategizing with your alliance, getting everything perfect on paper, right? But almost always without fail, that first match is scuffed somehow for you, right? Number 1 alliances know this very well. And number 2s are the same, right? It's always like, not only so in the new format with the best of 1, and especially this year, because the points are so close, you're often facing like a pretty good team in the 8 seed or the 7 seed, or in this case, a 4 seed and the third seed. You're facing like a pretty decent team. And so normally that first match, you're getting to know your team. You're running a new auto for the first time, right? You haven't driven in in an hour because of lunch, or you're tired, whatever the case may be. It's always scuffed, and so that's where a lot of the upsets can happen. As one of my most feared rounds of playoffs is on the 1 seed match 1. It's all like that one scares the heck out of me, not necessarily because of the alliance that we're playing, but because of my own alliance. And it just seems that something always goes awry, and oftentimes something goes awry, and then people start to kind of freak out, right? Like, let's say we're trying to run an intricate auto together, it doesn't hit, and then we got to figure out how to make up those points somehow, or one team forgets the strategy, and then the rest of the teams are very confused, or we're cycling really well, but we didn't leave the full 30 for endgame, and now we're freaking out because we talked about it for an hour that we were going to leave the full 30 for endgame and it doesn't hit, or whatever the case may be. It's always the first match of playoffs is the most scuffed. So, that said, it went a little scuffed for the 2 seed there against the 3 seed, but they still pulled out the victory, which is good, right? Because then the next match you play, you get even better, and then the next match you play, you get even better. And the 1 seed wasn't able to pull out their match, right, against the 4 seed, but as we'll see, they very quickly identify what went wrong there. Hint, it was the 30 points of penalties, right? And then what do we do going forward to get even better? And at the same time, just by playing together, you get better, right? So you're going to score more points usually the more you play with the team. Moving on to our next round. So this is going to be upper bracket. This is the 2 seed versus the 4 seed. The 2 seed having to switch bumper color because the 4 seed took out the 1 seed, which puts them at the top of the bracket, right? So if we remember correctly, the 4 seed upset the 1 seed due to 30 points of penalties, right? Oh, I'm going to pause it for a second and go back because this was exciting to see. So this is the Coconuts auto, starts all the way over here, comes out, shoots a far shot, does not make this one, but goes underneath the stage to grab a note. That must be, again, if someone on the Coconuts is in chat, I would love to know. This must be vision tracking the note itself based on how it looks at it in turns. Right there in the middle. Drives back under and goes for another shot. And drives back out to the line and grabs another one. So in total, it's a 3-note auto. It's a, it's a 3-note auto. They didn't make any there, but that's what I mean by on paper, the potential is there for them to have a really banger auto. In this match, we see 94-32 passing to the Coconuts for the first time. It's possible, although I don't know this for certain, it's possible that this was the plan the whole time, or they devised this scheme as a way to alleviate the Coconuts from having to cycle the field as much if they were worried about maybe them having more radio problems, taking hard hits. I'm not sure. But we see it pay big dividends early, right? Look how fast they're able to amp, and then how they're able to take advantage of their first amp cycle, right? So Coconuts have a note stolen there. Here comes one, right? I believe they've already scored. Oh, this is the first one. There's one right next to them. 8-bit's going to wait. Or no, they have 2. Sorry, it's hard to tell because I think the light. Yeah, there it goes. Second light. So now they're going to start it together, right? 1, 2. Those are 2 in the amp. Or 2 scored. 3. Right? So that's 3 in 1 amp period. It's what really balloons the score out away from the 4. But here comes 4 back with an amp. Again, shout out to Prytronics here. I don't know if I saw them score in the amp this well in quals, and I quite possibly was just running around and not paying close attention, but surprisingly quick and speedy, and did a really great job of taking advantage of the amplified period. And again, stealing notes not from the team, from the other alliance, not necessarily going right to their source every time. The 4 seed has 77-55 back playing for them, and this is the advantage that sometimes the 4 seed or the lower seed can have, where they have 3 robots who can all score, and the 4 seed taking advantage of this with 77-55 popping shots in. 11-65 going. I don't know if they maybe had some. Yeah, thank you, Eugene. Yes. So they must be. Yeah. So the coconuts are targeting the notes on the midline with their it's supposed to be 3.5. Yeah. Which is very cool. Which is very cool. Listen, you don't have to explain it to me. I'm all about when it works, so I know that feeling. I know that feeling a ton. Also, very cool. These are just things that I noticed. Like I said, I don't necessarily get to watch too many matches from field side very often, but just some little things. Really cool LED action on 8-bit over here. If you notice that they have LEDs on both sides of their robot, and they must be using their camera in this April tag to know, or their camera in that April tag. What I don't know which one they're using here. But if you watch their lights as they square up on the goal, it'll blink. I assume. Again, I'm making an assumption here, just looking at looking at the light, that it blinks in the direction it wants the driver to move. So you'll see that as of this moment, this light on the right is off. This light on the left is blinking. And then when it goes solid, they're presumably square on the goal, which I think is a really cool use of LEDs. You see that? Very cool. Very, very cool. So that's a little cool thing you may have missed. Yeah, 1165 intake issues. I think that was evident. I thought so while watching a lot of the matches, and so that really left Prytronics here and 7755 to try to score as much as possible. Prytronics both amping and scoring for themselves, and it's kind of just an easy or a breezy match, if you will, for the 2 seed. They don't make any mistakes penalty-wise, or at least not too many mistakes. They don't get slowed down too much or get ahead of themselves with the defense 1165 was giving them at their source. So they were really able to focus on their own game, which sometimes you need. Sometimes you hope for this. As an alliance, you hope for maybe a matchup that that the other team has some issues and you're free to just drive the field in practice, basically. It really helps in the long run. So Alliance 2 pulls out the victory. I don't have too many other things in my notes, other than Red had the huge deficit at auto, and they kept it close, but Blue Alliance pulls away at the end. A thing to note about the auto for Alliance 2 is when the coconuts are picking up those notes on the midline, even if they don't go in, it's huge for their alliance because what they're doing is they're pulling notes from the midline to their side, right? Which makes it harder for the opposing alliance to get notes out like after auto, right? You're basically hoarding the notes. Even if you're missing, you're putting them on your side of the field. So that's a really cool strategical aspect of a auto that can grab more notes from the midline, even if you're not making them. It's helpful in the long run. All right. Welcome back to me. While I find our next match, it's going to be the lower bracket, and we're already at an elimination game. As you know, we only play 4 alliances during the ARL playoffs, or the qualifier playoffs, if you will. So this is already our elimination match. This is going to be the 3-seeded alliance up against the number 1-seeded alliance. If you remember right from a little bit ago, the number 1 seed was knocked down to the lower bracket because of 30 points of fouls committed by 9987, 7755B. So it'll be interesting to watch what they have them do in this match. You'll also remember that the Alliance 3, while they did lose pretty handedly to Alliance 2 in their first match, they did have a really unlucky note fall on the wall of the amp, making it unusable. So strategic differences here. You don't see anything different really out of Red, out of the 1 seed. And they do take a lead into auto, but it's not as huge as you'd think. Again, what we were kind of just talking about, the fight at the midline when there are midline notes. There's always a huge fight there. So this time, without a note stuck on the wall, the Dragons are able to pop one in. 498 misses their note here, which ends up being a huge deterrent to them because they're, right, if this note goes in, then the Blue has 3 notes kind of sitting right in front of them, all ready to be scored while amplified. But instead, Dragons have to go over and try to score one, but they kind of fumble it. I think it's because they were in score mode, not scoring the amp mode. and it's a whole thing. So really the story of Alliance 3 in these playoffs was kind of just couldn't get out of their own way in the end. Again, I would like to shout out DOF here, really doing the best, and hopefully something that we see really utilized by a lot of teams later in these ARL qualifiers as they play more. A lot of our Arizona teams don't spend a huge amount of time in playoffs, so they don't spend a huge amount of time playing against another really good alliance, right? Some of our teams were able to attend the World Championship, and maybe the experience they had there really influenced their playoff play style. But what we can see from DUF specifically, and to an extent, 38 Prytronics a little bit, is they're making a point to cycle right over here to on 498 drive team, right, from this past season. It was like we had an order of operations, right? We score a note, first things first. Are we amplified? If we're amplified, is there a note on the ground close to us? If the answer is no, then we look up and we see if there's a note available to be stolen by the other team's subwoofer or by their amp. Stealing a note from the other team is so powerful because not only does it take away an easy pickup and scoring chance, it creates an entire cycle, which if you're playing defense, creates a really long cycle, right? So stealing notes, stealing as many as you can from the opponent's side of the field and near them is huge. If you go back and you watch the literal World Championship, Einstein Finals, you'll find that not only was there really good defense, but 1690 stealing notes was huge, right? Because it creates more cycles. And when you have as good a defense as 3-2-1 was playing on Einstein, when you have to create more cycles, that's actually really good. Like you're scoring more points for yourself beyond just the one steal of the note. So the number one seed really, they're just better, right? Like they had the lead out of auto, and they really hit their stride here. And this is what I was expecting out of the number one seed. When I hinted at that, I think their tally-op was really powerful. I think DOF correctly realized that 2403 is so fast cycling just back and forth to the source, that if they solo amped, even if they were maybe off cycled from each other one note, if they were just getting 3 notes per amp period instead of 4, like that was more than enough to win this event. Right, as we see here, they got 3 notes in this amp period instead of 4. Maybe if Plasma was scoring with them at the same speed they were able to score, they get all 4 there. But 3 is really good. In fact, on average, 3 was like really good for the season. You do see here at the end of the match, Plasma take a hit against the pole here, and I believe that either disconnected them or it did something because they didn't move here. I know it was only a second, but they didn't move. I wasn't sure. Maybe something happened to their swerve module or a CAN wire popped out. But that is the end of the road for the 3 seed. In the interest of time, because oh my goodness, we're already at 8:50. Holy moly. I know it's summer for most of us, or most of you, not for me. We are going to skip the upper bracket finals. It was a rematch of the upset. But in this rematch, 30 points of fouls did not come out. I would like to shout out from that match, just from my notes here. 7755 pulls out the passing strat, which was really cool to see that more than just 8-bit was passing on the other side of the field. And I know that DOF can also pass. They just didn't do it in playoffs. But seeing 7755 pass was really cool to see while being defended by their alt robot, 7755B. This is... I do think that we still are seeing in that rematch that 7755B was just a little too close to their source unnecessarily, and that really gets hammered out by the time the 1 seed makes it back to finals. Let's just take out 3853. Did they break? Is that why they parked so early? Oh, let's just take a look at it. I don't care. We're gonna go over 70. It's somewhere over here. Yeah. So this is the upper bracket finals. Like I said, we are going to see in this, we're going to see some passing from 7755B, which is really cool because Prytronics is really good. Look how deadly they are from this corner, right? The note's right in front of them. They pop 2 in. They grab 1. They start their own amp period. There are still 2 notes sitting here for them. That one might be broken. I can't really tell. They score 1. They score 2. You know, 1165 was able to score this one at the end here. I know they had some issues, but that would have been 3. So Prytronics did. I was wondering if you guys had any issues at the end. So what we see here is this match is actually really close again. If you can imagine that there were 30 points at penalties again, it would have swung again for the 4 seed. And it's just really cool to see that the 4 seed gets the upset due to penalties in match 1. They lose their next match pretty handedly, but then in match 3, it looks like they really finally hit on a strategy that worked really well for them, which is cool. You know, utilizing 7755 prime to pass across the field over to Prytronics really saved them that cycle time, and they were able to keep the match really close. Right? If we continue on here, the match is... okay, so I can explain the amp not operating. It actually was... yes, I can explain the amp not operating. We'll explain it in a second. Yes. Yeah. We'll talk about the amp in a second. It did, in fact, not stop working. It's very confusing. The lights went out. We'll talk about it in just 2 seconds. I was field side, so I have the full explanation. All right, so at the end of the match, it must be due to the radio problem. But I was very surprised that Prytronics parked so early, right? The score is tied. There's still 20 seconds left. You'd think that based on cycling, you know, just for the rest of the event, that Prytronics would have kept scoring. But it makes sense that if their radio was dangling, they weren't able to move. Alliance 1 is able to pop a few more shots in, and DOF smartly boxes out 1165 before they park at the end, right? Just keeping 1165 close. They can't drive across the field and park again. And so if we skip ahead to the score, there's a huge long discussion here where you bet they are talking about the Blue Alliance amp seemingly breaking. But what I can tell you, let me show the score. Show the score. It was a long discussion. I was there. It was a long discussion. There it is. All right. So number 1 seed ekes out this victory 57-55. And then what everyone is hinting at in chat, and this is also, by the way, still with 12 points of fouls added. So again, 7755B just finding themselves too close to that source line. So what everyone is hinting at in chat is, yes, the amp, the number 1 seed, the Blue Alliance amp, seemingly stopped working that match. And to the 1 seed themselves, to the blue seed, it did stop working. What we know is that it did not stop working. The ref tablet got, it was unplugged. I don't know how it happened. It was either a hard hit against the wall or the human player's foot caught it. I don't know how it happened, but the ref tablet unplugged, which made the lights stop working, but the counter inside kept working. So, it was still available to use, but the lights were out. Now, obviously, the 1 seed has no idea that this is the case, and you bet if the number 1 seed did lose this match, we would have had a replay, most likely, right? But because the 1 seed pulled the victory, right, there was no reason to replay. And I'm sure if the 1 seed went and talked to the head ref about it and the FTA about it after the match was over, that was the explanation that they got. So, yeah. The amp was seemingly out. Weirdly, I don't know how it's wired or connected, but the counter still worked, but the lights were out. 1 seed pulls off the win. If they didn't, yes, we would have greatly discussed replay, probably resulting in a replay to make it absolutely fair, because it wasn't. Anyway, moving on to Finals 1. So Finals 1, as soon as I click the 7051 something or other, 7 hours later, right here. Boom. So we have the 1 seed and the 2 seed. 2 seed in red because the 1 seed fell to the lowers, right? And this is where we see that those distinct auto differences in action, right? 2403 going for the, okay, hello, there it goes. They're multi-note, right? It's 1, 2, 3, and then they attempt to go for the 4. They don't quite pick it up. And then on the 2 side, right, we have the auto that they've been showing us so far, which is 9432, going for the 4 note and making some of them. I'm going to release the rankings in just 2 seconds. Well, not 2 seconds. That's a lie. As soon as we're done taking a look at these finals, we're going to release the champs rankings. And I have some news on how you can look at the champs rankings from now on pretty easily. Yep. Which makes a ton of sense. That makes a ton of sense, Eugene. That's kind of what we saw, what we've been seeing. 8-bit had a really good pass. And when y'all didn't have to drive as far, you guys worked really well. But shout out again. This kind of worked out perfectly, is what I was saying, right? DOF comes right through and steals this note during amplified period, right? If they don't steal that note, it's probably another score, or at least very close to another note in the speaker during amplified period. So that's huge. I pretty much agree, with the strategies both alliances were pulling off. I'm looking forward to seeing more teams pass, including 2046. I'm sure that a lot of teams have tested it and they all know it's possible. So I'm looking forward to seeing maybe more passing pulled out in quals. I think some teams are, maybe a little, not anxious, but shy to pull it out in quals. But I think as the qualifiers go on, yeah, and that's the thing is I didn't get to watch too much championship, too many of 2046 or 8-bit's championship matches. Obviously, saw 8-bit as a part of the World Championship winning alliance, but I didn't get to watch too many matches of these teams at champs. So knowing their full capabilities, or if they have new drivers, it all sometimes it changes. But on paper, I really like the approach of both teams here. I think 8-bit doing the hybrid cycle where they're passing to 2486 is very smart. I think 7703 playing defense on the source line makes a ton of sense. I think that DOF being the solo amper and Plasma just cycling back and forth makes again the most sense. So I agree with actually both these strategies. I think the number two seed runs into robot health problems come finals, and it's just a bad time for it to happen because the number 1 seed has their full head of steam, right? They put up the event high score here, I believe, and they don't look back in finals too. 8-bit definitely has some swerve issues in this match, which was kind of a snake biting them throughout all of quals. Only 10 points worth of fouls in this one for Alliance 1, so they really kind of put a stamp on it. And then if we skip ahead to just finals 2, and I'll let it play while we chat about it, you can see that probably the same swerve issues that 8-bit was having kind of affects their auto here, right? You can see it's just not the same auto, it's off. And then so out of auto, blue has a consistent 24, right? They were getting a consistent 19, consistent 24. Yeah, and I will say that, while the Coconuts were on their own in this match, they really did kind of show the power of what it could look like if they were being fed, right, and things were all functioning right. I think that, again, 6413 very wisely stealing. I think we're going to see that a lot, not just from them, but obviously for them, but from a variety of teams as these ARL playoffs move on, especially if you're confident in your driver, or your driver's confident, right? If you've been driving all season, you're confident that you can get in and get out, and or you have an under bumper intake, which is just great. It's kind of designed so that you can go full speed and not really care and just drive into things. It's really, really powerful, right? It also alleviates jamming, robots, like having more than one robot at the source, especially with defense, it can really get in the way. Right, so Alliance 1, like Alliance 2 keeps it close. Again, I think Coconuts did a really great job in this match keeping it close, but Alliance 1 really does just pull away at the end. And we have our ARL May Qualifier winner. It is 9 already, I know. I either got to start these things sooner, or where's my final score? There it is. Here's my final score so congratulations again, if it wasn't very clearly stated, congrats again to our number 1 Alliance, DOF, going almost undefeated for the event, 2403 and 7755B. And also great job to our number 2 seed, surviving playoffs, for some of them kind of robot health-wise limping to the end, but securing pretty vital championship rankings. And speaking of those championship rankings, we're going to skip right on into those. I'm very excited to show these off in a couple of new ways this year. So we're working to maybe streamline the process a little bit. So here is the championship standings. It's not true, but okay. Here are the championship standings. Boom, boom. There they are. That's not what I wanted. There we go. So we have DOF ranking 1, and if you notice, the difference between 48 and 46 goes back to that rank point average that I called out earlier. The difference between a 2.0 to 2.5 and above a 2.5. So that's why I was making a note that it's really, really important. And then we have 2403, the other winner of the event, at 46, 2486, 9432 tying at 35, and the tiebreakers determining that difference. 7755B at 5, 3853 at 26, 1165 at 24, and 7703 at with 22, and they're at 8, the 8 seed. Again, these are not official until a second event is played, and if you do better at an event, it replaces your poorer event. And there are more teams than just the top 8, but these are just the top 8. What we're going to post in chat right now is our spreadsheet. That this is now accessible to public, so you'll have a non-editable link, and you can take a look at how the numbers are broken down, right? And based on the results, right? So here are the rankings, right? From ARL 1, and then how they factor into the rankings, right? So you'll see that 3 teams ranked 8, right? But after the tiebreakers, you can see the difference, right? And we've listed the tiebreaker that was used. Again, don't come out with your pitchforks and your torches. If these are slightly off, just keep in mind that we are all volunteers and nothing is perfect first time around. So this is our first time creating something like this. We are pretty confident it's pretty close. But if you have any discrepancies you're concerned about, feel free to reach out to me and we'll take a closer look. But this way we can keep a very open book on how exactly the points are broken down and the tiebreakers used. Because I know that's always a little bit confusing when people just see the rankings. So hopefully, that graphic and that link will be posted in our ARL Discord following the conclusion of the show, if it hasn't been already. Hello. And that's gonna just about do it. We had a couple really cool things this ARL event. Again, it was our highest attended event we've had. We rolled out the judging in the pits for the first time. So if you were judged, if you interacted with our ARL judges at your pits and you received feedback, we hope that, again, baby steps. It was our first time running it, but we hope that the process was nice and that the feedback was helpful. And we are looking forward to continue iterating on that. We are excited that we didn't fall behind schedule. And we appreciate everybody working with us on any technical issues that we had, whether it be microphones, music, field. So we couldn't do ARL without such a nice community of teams, and so we really appreciate, as always, how patient everybody is month to month and with ARL as we kind of take this small thing and continue to try to build and expand it every event. As an event coordinator, program director, I really appreciate, shout out to everyone working with us in the pits. I know the pits were like weird, like really weird, but that's because we needed to take an opportunity to lay out a new pit layout for when we have more teams in attendance, right? And so this was my opportunity to do so. So I know there was a lot of empty space in those pits. And I know that it was a little bit confusing because there weren't teams in pits and it looked like it was a hallway, but it wasn't because it was a pit, but they didn't have a team in it. So I really appreciate y'all working with us on that. We can now safely allocate space for over 30 teams. To answer your question on the bumpers, we just had teams use white gaffer's tape and Sharpie on the numbers. We do have, elephant in the room. We don't have an event in June. So we are going to use our essentially 2 months off to try to maybe iterate on that bumper process, because I know that maybe for some scouters in the stands, it wasn't blatantly obvious which robot was which down there with white gaffer's tape and Sharpied on numbers. But it's something we'll iterate on. We don't really want to modify people's robots, right? But and we have to also come up with a way that we think is going to be a testament to, we'll stand up to the rigors of competition. Sorry, that's what I was trying to get at. I do have Dan reminding me, DOF mentor reminding me that 498 was in this match, or was also a part of a match where this happened. So I remember it very clearly because our drive coach was really excited to tell me about it. But we did have one very fascinating qual match that happened, or multiple. I don't know. I know it may have happened more than once. But if you're watching all the matches back on our YouTube, keep an eye out for the Coconuts scoring a note in the other team's amp to ensure co-op. Might be something that other teams look to do in future ARLs if you're not confident in your opponent's amp ability and you really want to make sure you get that co-op. Co-op, by the way, goes into your ranking for the event. It is part of the tiebreakers, so it can be very important, and it lowers that threshold, so it could be very important. So that was really cool to see. Saw that a couple times during the regular season, not in Arizona. Saw it a couple times during the regular season, and it is a strategy to keep in your back pocket for sure. So thanks everybody again. Make sure to follow us on our socials: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We have a LinkedIn. Did I miss one? Instagram, Twitter. Oh, YouTube. Subscribe to us on YouTube. You'll find this episode and all of our matches from ARL May there very shortly. We're working on it. What do you think of the bot scoring the bot? What do I think of it? I think it's very smart. I think it's very, very smart. I think in an ARL qualifier field that's maybe less high scoring, ensuring that you're lowering that RP for yourself is huge. Is really important. In fact, we could probably find the match where it happened here in a second. Let me find it. Scroll. Because I know that it was... I'm at the wrong event. Haha. Joke's on me. I believe it was Qual 15. Right? It's Qual 15. And you'll see that 2486, 498, and 3853 got scroll. I believe we can see... Where does it show here? Am I dumb? Where does it show if co-op happened? Does it show here? Why? Co-op, duh. Okay, so co-op criteria was met. Maybe this wasn't the match. Is this the match? What match was it? whatever. This is what I get for trying to. This is what I get for trying to look it up live. Anyway, it happened. It was really cool. Definitely look forward in those matches. So, thank you everyone. As a reminder, we do not have an ARL June, so use this opportunity, use this time to work on your robots, maybe add some new things. There is a 5-pound weight increase for ARL qualifiers, so you can utilize that weight. You did it twice. Oh, even better. Okay, badass. I mean, sorry. Very cool. No, it's cool. I agree with the strategy a lot. I think it's something that other teams might want to look to do. Especially, hint, if you're maybe... I'll have to talk with Joshua. I'm not sure how it would work if you played a bunch of Phantoms. The Phantoms are kind of rude. They won't hit the co-op button for you, so it wouldn't matter if you put a note in there. You still have to hit the button. Anyway, no ARL in June. We will miss you all. It's very sad. But we will be back in July. But it is going to be about a 2-month break, so I would utilize this time to get some much-needed rest if you've been grinding. If you did the World Championship and you went right from the World Championship into finals, and you went right from finals or end-of-the-year schoolwork into ARL, utilize this time to take a little bit of a rest, play some video games, I don't know, go hiking, do whatever y'all do during the summer, and then come back in July or at the end of June and get ready for ARL July. So we are planning a couple things in June on the ARL channels. So keep an eye out for those, especially in our Discord. If you're not in there, make sure to hop in. We might dabble a bit in maybe a community night. So maybe some Rocket League or, I don't know, Jackbox or something where we play some games on the ARL Twitch with our community. Just a way for you all to stay connected during this 2 months, essentially 2-month gap. So the Discord is the place to be for any of that. So make sure to join, and you can find that link in the chat as well. Yeah, thanks for hanging out with me on this Wednesday. Looking forward to more episodes of this show, and some more segments we're gonna have. Figure out how to keep my playoff breakdown to maybe like a 30-minute limit. I know I just went... they were all so interesting. I thought the matches were all really interesting, so wanted to cover them all. But thanks for hanging out tonight. Remember, and this is probably the most important thing, Haikyuu movie in theaters this Friday. So if you're a Haikyuu stan like myself, see you there. Start earlier? We could. I like 8 p.m. though, because it's after everyone eats dinner, so I figure this was a good time. And during the summer, maybe less important to get done by 9 p.m. So, all right, everyone. Thanks again. We will chat soon. We'll be back with something. Keep an eye on the Discord. Everyone have a good night. Bye-bye.